destiny. That's will. That's striving. That's being a trailblazer and explorer. Going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe. It's all there. Life is fiery with its beauty. It's incredible detail. Tuning into it. They want to shatter your mind. Talking about Justin Bieber!
Today we look at the various ufologists' testimonies we've heard over the years regarding everything from truths behind war, being chased in Area 51, to different alien races' agendas. What I, like many of you, find interesting is the obvious consistencies these stories have. But it seems the more we hear the different philosophies on the purpose of aliens visiting us, we're always left with more questions.
And that's when Gene and me and Bob's wife and his wife's sister, we drove in. We had in the back Geiger counters, film, cameras, videos, everything. And as we drove down Groom Lake Road at that time, we thought that the legal cutoff was that road that comes down from Mailbox Road. And so when we got there, I said, look, let's just stay here. And, you know, even if we get a mile closer, it's not going to make that much difference in the film. And they said, no, let's go on. So we went another couple hundred feet, and we had the lights out. As we stopped, a couple sets of headlights came on in front of the vehicle, and we decided to run because I thought we were in illegal territory. As it turns out, we weren't, and we could have all avoided a lot of trouble. And Bob never would have lost his job, and I never would have lost mine if we'd have just, sat there and let him walk up to us. But the fact is, we thought we were in illegal territory, and we turned around. We started going 90 miles an hour down the road with them in hot pursuit. We almost made it to the highway, but they had sent another Bronco around and cut us off. And when we saw him coming down the road, we stopped. Bob ran out in the desert. I jumped out and started setting up the telescope, and that's when the first Bronco came to a halt. And I ran up and threw my hands against the top of the car, and I said, holy smokes, you guys aren't dopers, are you? You scared the hell out of us out here. And they get out, and they all were armed with machine guns. They stand around. There was like 4 or 5 of them, and they stood at port arms around us. And the one guy said, what are you guys doing up here? And we said, we're just looking at the stars. He said, well, why did you run? And I said, like I said, we thought you were dopers. And he said, well, we're not. We need to see some identification, and we showed him some, we had to give him our social security and the driver's license, and he ran it, and all this process took about 30 minutes. And he said, we can't kick you off the range here because it's BLM land. He said, but we'll make it awful uncomfortable if you stay here. So they turned around and left. We stood behind the car waiting for about 15 minutes, and then Bob comes out of the desert. And we start talking about all the stuff that we'd done, the 3 weeks before, the 2 weeks before, all the stuff that we had done that night, all the preparation, everything, not realizing that all the time they had just gone about maybe 100 meters down the road and were filming us in infrared and listening to us with a parabolic microphone, all of which was made readily apparent to Bob the next day when he was taken up to security. So anyway, we packed up our stuff and went out on the road, and as we got to the highway, we were stopped by the Lincoln County Sheriff, Doug Lamoureux, who has since become a good friend. And he kept us there for an hour. He wanted to see in the trunk, but we wouldn't let him in there, mainly because that was where the gun was that Bob had taken out in the desert. But anyway, it seems that Lamoureux knew exactly what was going on. He wanted to know why there was 5 people in the vehicle now and only 4 on the test site, and he wanted to know where the gun was. So obviously there was communication between the security forces on the test site and the sheriff. Anyway, we stood there for an hour. Nobody said anything. And finally, to bring this all to a halt, Bob decided to confess that it was his gun, and it was in the trunk. And I saw him walking to go ahead and do it. And at that split second, Doug said, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. I've been advised to release you guys, but we don't want to ever see you here again, ever. And he let us go. And it was a real quiet ride home that night. And the next day, Bob's boss, Dennis Mariana, called him up and said, Bob, I'm going to pick you up. Don't go to the airplane. Meaning don't go to the EGJ. He picked him up. He drove him up to Indian Springs, which is this site of the entire security for the test site. And they actually pulled him out of the car with a gun in his head and a gun in his ear and said, Bob, when we gave you the security clearance and told you this was a secret, it didn't mean you could tell all your friends about the flying saucers.
The first things they said was, when we trusted you with this information, we didn't mean, intend for you to tell everyone you know about it. The guard held an M16 directly in my face and, wanted to impress upon me how serious they were about it.
1962, Kennedy ordered the what became known as the report on Iron Mountain. And what he was interested in was finding out if there's anything other than war that could stimulate the economy to the extent war could. We've always had a war to stimulate the economy. Always had one. In recent years, we had Vietnam and then Saddam Hussein, which was all manufactured. I mean, I flew an airline. For an airline, we used to take the troops, American troops in there, Green Berets, to train Saddam for the 2 or 3 years before that war.
Well, they create the crisis.
They create the crisis. So the report from Iron Mountain said really that there was nothing that would stimulate the economy as well as war. And they had considered medical research, space research. They said that there was one thing that would stimulate it, and that was a threat from an extraterrestrial species, real or imagined.
I would like to put together a meeting between you and a colleague of mine who works for the Defense Intelligence Agency. He is an analyst, and his job is analyzing extraterrestrial biological entities. And he began by saying, I'm retiring after 23 years, and my job was to monitor and analyze the conflict of 3 extraterrestrial biological entity civilizations that have been terraforming and manipulating genetic material on this planet for at least 270 million years. And then over the next 7 hours, he broke down tall blondes, reptilian humanoids, and the grays. He said the grays were largely artificial intelligence. A lot was unknown about the progenitor of the grays. The blondes were in many, many solar systems in the Milky Way galaxy. That the reptilians were here first. And that the reptilians claim Earth as their own. But the blondes want to be able to do laboratory experiments on Earth as well, and so do the grays. 3-way conflict. The blondes have been trying to annihilate the reptilians. The reptilians have been trying to annihilate the blondes. The grays have sometimes taken sides. Other times they do their own independent thing. But he said, what we have come to learn is why I wanted to do this meeting with you. Because I got a call that said you have to get Linda Moulton Howe's new book. She has a 106-page chapter about the resurrection technology that we have never wanted anyone to know anything about, that I and others in the DIA had closed down any discovery of this ever. And I said, well, my sources are the people in the human abduction syndrome. He said, I realize we underestimate what the non-humans are doing with people. And then he talked to me about how the reptilians and the blondes fight. He said, the blondes make reptilian containers, and they have the ability to put their consciousness and their life force into the reptilian container. The reptilians began to catch on to what the blondes were doing and they started making blonde containers and putting their reptilian consciousness. And then the grays saw what the blondes and the reptilians were doing, and the grays created blondes and reptilians that they would move into. And he said, Linda, you cannot tell the players on this planet without very sophisticated technology. He said over time, in the analysis that he did, that the biggest fight seemed to be over territory. And the biggest fight seemed to be over what to do or not to do with one of the latest genetic experiments, Homo sapiens sapiens. And all three of those extraterrestrial groups want to do laboratory experiments here. They want the other two to go away. And he said to me, what I think and why I'm talking to you and why I sought you out. I frankly think that if the whole world knew the whole truth that I'm talking to you today, it would probably create a dent in the ability of those three extraterrestrial civilizations to manipulate humans.
Religion is something we as humans are all able to practice, be it with discipline or without. Like races of people, there are many, yet all of them. Like alien ufologists' testimony have remarkable similarities. One similarity, never explained by any ufologist who's covered the details of aliens creating us, is their involvement, if any, in the display of miracles. Many have been documented and filmed throughout the history of Christianity, as well as other religions in all parts of the world, by people who've never met, but have stories reflecting virtually the same experience, which logically would define there's more to religion than perhaps we can understand. I leave you with Mr. Lear explaining why the powers that be may be doing the right thing withholding information.
Before they make the
announcement that we've had contact with outer space and the conference. What?
Never.
You don't think so?
No. I used to think they were getting it. I have no doubt now that they never intended to, and I fully agree with them. Now, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was going on the lecture, hey, you gotta listen to this, you gotta see what's going on. Now, I know they were right. I mean, mankind is not, never be ready for this kind of crisis. Sure, it's a thing for you and me and, very small segment of society. It's committed to, but no way would the public ever be told about this.
What do you think would happen if they were?
It would probably cause problems that the government of the world are not equipped to handle. The basic issue is religion.